Hi, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing another ultralight service here. And this will be disassembly only in this video, and we'll do a separate reassembly video. So we got a Shimano BX-10 here. And this is one of 4 different reels, actually, that I have that are like this one. They're all, ultralights, and they just have this same model and design, all made by Shimano. But they do all have some varying differences. Some of them are just bushings, some of them have ball bearings, so forth and so on. This is primarily a kind of a standard, basic model here, if you will. Okay, but we're gonna get into the take apart here, and we're gonna go through all the steps one by one, and we're gonna get this reel ready to go on out and do some fishing. So these reels are essentially my go-to reels for trout fishing in streams and whatnot, and that season is upon us right now, of course. So I want to make sure that this one's ready to go. And this one primarily right now is kind of a backup for me, but once again, all 4 reels that I have, they're all pretty similar to each other, and they all function pretty much the same for the most part. So spool comes off like so. These reels were made in the early to mid 80s, in that area, or actually I'd say almost late 80s up to that point. And they did come with drag stacks that were also modified down the road, and they did like an upgrade basically to the drag stacks in these. So we've got 3 different screws here that we're going to take out. But this reel's actually quite dusty from traveling around in the bag, and something that typically happens when you're ultralight fishing, at least, is the line is so thin, and it is easy for it to get tangled up and wrapped up within underneath the rotor, and then it gets wrapped around here. And so I always carry spare spools that are already spooled up with 4-pound test, and I carry always at least 1 extra reel just for that purpose, because if the bite is on, you can't spend a bunch of time trying to respool your reels and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I have more than a couple of them. So we're going to take the side plate off here. Okay, so it's a little dirty in there. We're going to clean that up. So we've got a bushing here, and then there's also 3 very thin washers right here. So you just want to make note of those washers and make sure that you don't lose those, and understand the orientation of those. And we got our cam, but you can see there's old grease on here. It's kind of grayed out and dirty and all that kind of thing. So there's our main gear. All right, and we're just going to hose off all these pieces and parts here with some WD-40. Let that work its way in, clean all that up really well. Okay, and then we've also got our clicker tongue down here, and it's going to come loose at this point, so you want to make sure you don't lose that. Put that off to the side. Okay, now our drive shaft here needs to come out, and that's kind of a tricky thing to do sometimes on this particular reel. Very difficult to see with this dirty grease here, but there's actually 2 retainer rings in here that hold that in place. And what you have to do is you have to pry them out basically with the help of a couple of small precision screwdrivers, like this one in my hand here. So you gotta roll it around, and then you gotta find where the opening is. Okay, and then we're gonna press down with these 2 screwdrivers here, and you really want to be careful because you don't want to lose these, and they will go flying away on you. So just use caution when you're doing this. Okay. But yeah, sometimes it's really hard to get in there and see these, and they're on pretty tight. And actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to spray a little bit of WD in there, and then take a toothbrush to clean them off a little bit so that I can actually see what I'm doing here. Because right now, with how dirty it is, it's pretty difficult. I'm going to try once again here. This one specifically is being very stubborn. So I'm going to pause for a second here, and we're going to get this out. Okay, so those things are really stubborn and difficult to get out sometimes, but I'm just going to hold them up here on my finger here so you can see just in fact how small these really are, okay? Don't want to lose those, okay? I'm actually going to put them over here on that side. This is where these little parts trays come in really handy because these parts are just so small. Okay, so we got our drive shaft here. Also make note that there's usually a washer or two here at the top. In this case, it looks like it's only one. I'm not sure if that's actually missing one or not. It's probably right. I'll have to go back and look at a schematic. But we've got a block here. And then we've got a set screw here that needs to come out. Take that out. And put those pieces in there. And then I believe it's a 10 millimeter nut here, and it is. Take that off, get our rotor off. Okay, and then in here we've got two set screws here that need to come out. And this is part of the assembly that is a little challenging, I find, usually to work on the pinion gear assembly and the components that are in here. Okay, so you've got a plastic retainer ring here, and this ring does actually serve a purpose here, and then there's a few other pieces in here. You can't really see them because of the way this is, and ultimately what you have to do is you have to take this plastic retainer out typically, and I normally do that just with the help of a pair of needle nose like this, but you want to be gentle because you do not want to crack or break this piece. Okay, so you need to kind of use caution when you're doing this. This one is particularly being stubborn, just like those retainers, those metal ones. Okay, so we finally got that out. Pretty stubborn. You just want to use caution and make sure that you don't break it. Okay, we got that piece there, and then we can take the rest of these pieces out here, and you want to make note of the orientation of these pieces. Okay, so we've got a plastic bushing here. This is the non-ball bearing version, which is also another reason why this is kind of a backup for me, just because I like using ball bearing reels usually when I'm trout fishing. And then we've got a couple of these pieces here. Okay, and you really gotta use caution here because these are small, these pieces here, and you got to make sure that they go back in the right order. Okay, and then you've got this larger ring here. Okay, and we got this cam here. All right, and then pinion gear. So there's quite a few pieces here, as you can see. It's a little more sophisticated than one would think. You know, if you just had a ball bearing, you know, resting on the shaft, you know, you wouldn't have all these pieces and parts here necessarily. You might have like one of those washers, and then it would go to the cam and so forth and so on. Okay, and then the plastic piece in the running order would actually be there. Okay, but we're going to clean up all these pieces here. We're just going to get that WD-40 out and hose these down right now while they're in that position. Okay, and then at this point we're ready to remove our drag stack. Okay, and we're going to do that by taking this screw out here. And what we're going to do is, once we have all this completely disassembled, is off camera, I'm going to be going through all these parts one by one with Q-tips and rags, you know, paper towels and whatnot, and we're going to get all these things cleaned up. A lot of sand and grit and dirt has a tendency to build up down in this housing here, so you want to make sure you take care of that. Okay, and then we have a bunch of different pieces here that come out typically. There's usually a washer or two here. There's a plastic nylon washer. It rests underneath there. Okay. And then we've got a spring. And the thing about these rear drag stacks that's pretty common and typical is they get a lot of oil and grease buildup because it sinks down to the bottom into this drag stack chamber here. So that's not an uncommon problem. And that's why it's important to do regular maintenance on your fishing reel. And one thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to try to poke out this shaft here that's holding the drag stack so that I can kind of get some grip on it here, because it's kind of nestled deep down in there, because you don't want to lose orientation of the way the drag stack has been put together if you can avoid it. I do recommend getting a schematic though if you're working on any reel really. Okay, but I'm going to lay these washers out one by one. Okay. And these drag stacks and these small little reels, they can be complicated sometimes. And I know I've changed out some of these washers before over time because they do wear out, but there's usually a fabric washer and a rubber washer in sequence, and then some of these metal washers here, of course. So I'm going to have to go back and look at the schematic and see if this is actually in fact all the washers. It should be. Getting parts for this reel is difficult for any of these models that are this size made by Shimano. They just, there's not a lot of them out there anymore in terms of parts suppliers for these vintage models. All right, so there's a little spacer washer hiding under there. Okay, but that is pretty much the entire reel taken apart with the exception of this dog lever here. There's really no need to take that out, but we are going to clean. Okay, we're going to take our WD-40 and we're going to clean all these pieces and parts up. We're going to dry off our drag stack, and then when we come back, we will do a complete step-by-step reassembly of this reel and get it ready to go back out on the water. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe, hit that notification button. That way you will be getting all the updates as to when there are new videos coming out, and the next one will be on the reassembly of this reel. We'll see you next time.